Behind every locked door lies a story the world was never meant to hear. Welcome to Behind Bars TV, where we uncover the hidden realities of the world's toughest prisons, untold inmate experiences, and the systems built to contain them. From supermax facilities to forgotten penitentiaries, we reveal the truth behind concrete walls and razor wire. This is not fiction. This is the world behind bars. There's a kind of punishment that doesn't leave bruises. It doesn't draw blood. It doesn't scream. It just erases. This is solitary confinement, where silence is the sentence, and the human mind becomes the crime scene. The birth of isolation. Solitary confinement began as an experiment, not in cruelty, but in repentance. In 1829, at the Eastern State Penitentiary, Quaker reformers believed silence could bring salvation. They thought solitude would force reflection, remorse, and reform. They wanted to speak to the soul, but they only found madness. After a few weeks alone, I forgot the sound of my own voice. Doctors noticed early signs of psychosis, hallucinations, and suicide. But instead of stopping, America scaled it. What began as spiritual discipline became industrial punishment. From reform to revenge. As crime rose, compassion fell. The public wanted control, not mercy. By the 1990s, prisons no longer aimed to reform people. They aimed to contain them. The more we feared chaos, the more we built cages. The new model was the supermax, a fortress designed to keep the worst of the worst in total isolation. No conversation, no touch, no human contact for years, sometimes decades. The idea was simple: control everything. But they forgot, the mind is the one thing you can't cage. 23 hours of nothing. Solitary confinement isn't measured in days. It's measured in seconds. Every tick of the clock stretches longer than the last. Time doesn't pass in isolation. It lingers, like an echo you can't escape. Meals come through a metal slot. Letters are censored. The only human voice comes from guards giving orders. Face the wall. Hands behind your back. Step back. The body stays alive. The mind starts to disappear. The mind begins to fracture. Psychologists studying long-term isolation found that after just 15 days, the brain begins to deteriorate. Memory weakens. Emotional regulation collapses. Hallucinations begin. Humans are social by design. Remove connection, and the mind starts devouring itself. By the third month, many experience social death, a state where the brain stops distinguishing between living and existing. You can't hear a scream that never leaves your head. The experiment nobody admitted. Solitary confinement was never officially labeled an experiment. But inside California's Pelican Bay, SHU, it became exactly that. They called it a security housing unit. The men inside called it the pit. After 2 years, I stopped dreaming. After 5, I stopped caring. Researchers later found that inmates in isolation had the same brainwave activity as patients with severe brain injuries. Sleep cycles vanished. Emotion control collapsed. Some clawed at their own skin, desperate to feel something real. They said it was control, but it was chaos disguised as order. Letters from the void. The only way to speak from solitary is to write. But words don't flow easily when your world is 6 feet wide. When you've got no one to talk to, paper becomes your last friend. Letters smuggled out from Red Onion, Pelican Bay, Angola, and ADX Florence all say the same thing. Isolation doesn't rehabilitate, it erases. They built the walls to keep danger out. But what they trapped was humanity. The mind eats itself. Doctors studying isolation call it psychological starvation. The brain, deprived of stimuli, begins consuming itself. Hallucinating sounds, conjuring faces, or inventing conversations. When the mind is starved, it starts feeding on memories. Prisoners report hearing footsteps that never arrive, smelling non-existent meals, or feeling invisible insects crawling under their skin. The line between memory and madness doesn't blur, it dissolves. After 5 years, eyes wide, trembling hands, speech slow and scattered. This is what control looks like when the mind becomes collateral damage. The silent epidemic. Between 2000 and 2020, hundreds of inmates in solitary took their own lives. Not with weapons, but with silence. Sheets, shoelaces, plastic bags, anything to stop the noise inside their heads. They say solitary is for the violent. But inside, violence turns inward. Each report reduces a life to one sentence. Inmate found unresponsive. No mention of the voices. No mention of the years without touch. No mention of what silence costs. Every death in solitary isn't a suicide. It's a confession from a system that stopped listening. The language of the lost. Even in total isolation, humans find a way to connect. Inmates in supermax prisons create vent languages, tapping messages through walls, pipes, and drains. They took away their voices, so they built a new one. These secret rhythms become lifelines, a reminder that someone, somewhere, still exists. In a place built to destroy communication, sound becomes rebellion. One former inmate described it perfectly. It's not conversation, it's survival. They can cage a man. They can't cage the will to be heard. The laws of silence. Over the last 2 decades, prisoners have taken their silence to court, filing lawsuits under the 8th Amendment. Cruel and unusual punishment. They call it policy. The law calls it torture. Courts ordered reforms. Prisons promised change. But most just rebranded solitary confinement as administrative segregation. Same walls. Same silence. New name. When language becomes camouflage, justice becomes illusion. An inmate laughs bitterly. Different label. Same box. They didn't fix the system. They just renamed it. The men who came back wrong. For most inmates, release means freedom. For those leaving solitary confinement, release feels like landing on another planet. They left the box, but the box never left them. Doctors call it post-isolation syndrome, a mix of anxiety, paranoia, and emotional numbness. Men forget how to look others in the eye. Some can't stand crowds. Some can't sleep without the sound of chains. Freedom is supposed to heal you. For them, it reopens the wound. You can take a man out of the cell. But how do you take the cell out of the man? The guards behind the walls. Isolation doesn't just break the inmates. It breaks the people paid to enforce it. You can't stare into despair every day and expect to walk away clean. High suicide rates among correctional officers often go unreported. They spend 12 hours a day in the same silence, except they can leave. But many don't truly leave at all. The system turns everyone into inmates. Some just wear different uniforms. Isolation isn't just a place. It's a contagion. The business of solitude. Solitary confinement isn't just punishment, it's profit. Each isolation cell costs up to 3 times more to maintain than a general population bed. But contracts, security budgets, and behavioral modification programs keep the money flowing. Misery has become a line item. Prisons justify it as safety investment. But the quieter the inmate, the fatter the invoice. Control became commerce, and silence became the product. When profit depends on pain, reform becomes bad business. The ones who fought back. Not everyone accepted silence as destiny. Across the country, survivors began to speak, not through walls, but through microphones, documentaries, and books. They took away their voices. Now those voices are louder than ever. Advocates pushed for laws limiting isolation to 15 days, echoing UN human rights standards. Some states listened. Most didn't. Reform comes slow when silence still pays. The whistleblowers. Even inside the system, not everyone could keep quiet. A handful of officers, psychologists, and case managers began leaking reports, exposing falsified documents, hidden suicides, and retaliation against reformers. They built a fortress of silence. But truth finds cracks. Federal investigators reviewed internal emails that read, "Keep it off record. Segregation saves paperwork." When silence becomes policy, speaking up becomes rebellion. They wanted to bury the truth. But even buried things echo underground. When God stops answering, faith is supposed to be the last refuge in darkness. But what happens when even faith can't find you? In the silence, you start wondering if God forgot which cell you're in. In solitary, men build their own religions. Some worship time. Some worship light. Some worship the sound of their heartbeat. You pray for forgiveness, but you don't know what you're guilty of anymore. The hallucinations become company. After months, without human touch, the mind starts inventing it. Prisoners report hearing voices, not from spirits, but from memory. Old friends, dead relatives, even guards long gone. When you're alone long enough, the walls start talking, and you start listening. Psychiatrists call it adaptive psychosis, the brain's desperate attempt to protect itself by creating a world that doesn't exist. Hallucinations aren't madness. They're the mind's rebellion against extinction. The reporter who opened the door. For decades, the world outside knew almost nothing, until one reporter broke the silence. She didn't sneak in through a fence. She walked through the front door and refused to look away. Her work reached Congress. Cameras followed. America saw what it had built and what it refused to destroy. It took one voice from outside to hear the thousands screaming within. The fight for the 15th day. In 2015, the United Nations declared solitary confinement beyond 15 days a form of torture. But in America, tens of thousands still serve years, some decades. The world called it inhuman. America called it necessary. Reform doesn't start in policy. It starts in conscience. The echo remains. Decades later, the walls still stand. The cells are still full, and the silence still echoes. The human mind is resilient, but it's not unbreakable. Every wall has a cost, and this one was our humanity. If punishment is silence, then mercy must be listening. What you just saw is more than a story. It's a reality lived by thousands behind bars. If you believe in uncovering the truth, the kind hidden behind concrete walls and silence, then join us. Subscribe to Behind Bars TV and never miss a chapter in the world's most dangerous stories. Until next time, stay aware, stay informed, and remember, freedom and confinement are sometimes only a wall apart.